Thanks for joining the ABCs of Classroom Lighting Trends and Solutions webinar. Our presenter this afternoon, Trish Foster, is uniquely qualified to speak to this topic. She joined Acuity Brands in 1999 and now leads education market development, driving total lighting solutions for educational facilities. In addition to industry credentials that include lighting certification by the NCQLP, Trish is a lead Green Associate. She served as Education Chair for the IES Georgia section for 5 years and was an integral part in establishing the IES student chapter at Georgia Tech University in Atlanta. Please meet Trish.
Great. Thank you so much, Holly. Good day, everyone. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to join us for the webinar today, the ABCs of Classroom Lighting. Over the next 30 minutes or so, there are several different discussion points that we'll be addressing. The first is we'll talk about some of the challenges you face when you're working on a school renovation project, especially those projects that occur in that crunch time during the summer vacation break. And we know that time and budget constraints can usually cause some pain points for you. So we're going to talk through some of those challenges. We're also going to talk about trends that are driving change on some of our campuses today. We'll go over some data, if you will, and some facts about schools. And then we'll wrap up the discussion with lighting solutions for classrooms. That's where we're going to talk about the ABC solutions. And what does ABC mean? It means we're going to give you available solutions that you can get to meet those tight deadlines. We're going to give you solutions that deliver better quality of light and also solutions that are very cost effective so that they can help fall within your budget constraints. So let's get started first with a polling question to make sure everybody's awake and ready to go today. The first question is, what is the main influence for your lighting decisions? Please select the most appropriate response. Okay, it looks like performance of product is number one. And as we go through the discussion, we will touch on that particular characteristic, especially when we get to the end of the presentation and we're talking about specific solutions. So let's talk about what your challenges are. We're working on a school project, just like many other projects. There are several different stakeholders, and we had to take into account all of these stakeholders and their specific needs and what they want to get out of these projects and these renovations. First, of course, the most obvious is that we have the students. And the students are there for one reason. They need to learn. So therefore, we need to give them the right amount of light for the task at hand. We need to make sure that we're there to improve their visibility and to improve their visual comfort in the space. Next, we have the teachers. And the teachers are really there to enable those learning activities. You know, on one hand, the teacher's main job is to stand in front of the classroom and to teach and to educate. But they also have a secondary function, and that's to really control behavior and mood in the classroom. Finally, we have the administrator. And the administrator's job can be a little bit tricky. With the administrator, they're there to improve outcomes. They want to attract new students to their campuses. But at the same time, they have to watch the budget, right? They have to lower maintenance costs. They have to lower the energy use, which impacts that bottom line. So the administrator has kind of a tough role. Well, you guys have a tough role as well because you have to meet all those stakeholders' needs. But at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, you have to keep your eye on that budget. You have to keep your eye on the time so that it doesn't delay school starts. And you have to positively impact the student and teacher mood and behavior. So you're balancing quite a lot of different expectations and demands when you begin to work on a school project. Another challenge, take a look at this slide. What you see here is a lot of different activities, everything from learning to playing to reading and writing, even singing and laughing. All of these different activities are things that take place on a school campus. And because there's so many different activities that take place on a campus, that opens up a whole other challenge because now you have a wide variety of different spaces that you're responsible for illuminating. You have classrooms, libraries, the locker rooms and the gymnasiums. And all these different activities take place in all these different applications. So we have to make sure that the right lighting and control solutions are in place. We're seeing a lot of trends these days in schools, and we're going to touch on each of these trends on this slide right here. The first is that of third teacher. Some of you may have not actually heard the term third teacher, but I'm sure that many of you are very familiar with the new concept of collaborative learning spaces. And that's basically what third teacher is. In the past, we've always known that students learn from They learn from the teachers. They learn from communicating and exchanging ideas with other students. Well, now we know that students also learn from their environment, and that environment is now being identified as the third teacher. That's why when you walk into classrooms today, you don't see the traditional classroom-style seating. You see small huddle areas where students can congregate and collaborate with each other in those spaces. And the reason why I bring up this trend is that it makes it even more important to incorporate controls into a classroom setting, because you need the flexibility to change that lighting based on what's happening in that space. The next trend that we're seeing and hearing quite a bit about is that around tunable light solutions for classrooms. And there's tons of research out there that addresses this topic. Granted, most of the research is out of the European community and out of Russia, and I've even seen some studies out of Asia. And what's very promising about a lot of this research that we're seeing out there is there's a lot of consistencies. For the most part, you'll see that it's the warmer color temperatures that are best for those individual task time, like when a student's sitting reading at their desk. And most all the research agrees that the really cooler temperatures are more important for those times when you want to boost energy levels in a classroom. Where we're seeing some inconsistencies in the research, though, is exactly which color temperatures are the most appropriate for certain activities. But nonetheless, we do know that changing color temperatures does have an impact on the student's behavior and their mood in that classroom environment, and I really believe we're going to continue to see tunable light solutions grow in those type of applications. The next trend that we're hearing about is around sustainability. And with sustainability, that's kind of a generic term, right? I could ask every one of you guys who have joined us for the call today, how do you define sustainability? But no matter how we individually define it, we do know that a school that can market itself as a sustainable school or as a green school will attract new students to their campus. Especially when we talk about higher education. I know I have visited several campuses across the country, and they have reiterated the fact that being able to be a green school is one of the biggest marketing tools that they have. So we know that will continue to grow. Next, we have the Internet of Things. You know, we've all been hearing the buzz about the Internet of Things and how it can connect us all together. It can make life easier in some cases. Well, campuses are starting to see the benefit of how they could use this whole idea of the Internet of Things. Let's talk about some different ways. Let's think about from a safety and security standpoint, right? You can have license plate recognition. Maybe you can heat map in classrooms and understand if all the students that are supposed to be in a classroom are actually in that classroom. Also, we've heard some interesting ways to use the Internet of Things. Think about a major university on game day, when you have tons of visitors flooding the city and parking is very difficult. Well, you can use the Internet of Things to lead people to available parking spaces. So more and more we're seeing the use for this great technology on campuses, whether it's K-12 campuses or even higher education. Another trend and talking point that's come up more and more over the past year or so is that around designing classroom spaces for students with special needs. You know, students perhaps that have autism or have a little bit more trouble focusing in the classroom, and really understanding how to light the spaces for those students. Another trend is what I have called on this slide total solutions. But basically it means connecting the entire campus, connecting the lighting and the control solutions with the HVAC and in some cases with the security system there. So we're seeing campuses wanting to connect their entire campus. And finally, while this isn't really a trend, I think it's so important that we keep bringing this up, but it's around safety and security. We know campuses are not going to be able to attract and retain new students and faculty for that matter if they don't have safe campuses. So finally, we have a trend around what I'm going to call high-performance lighting systems. And we all hear the term high-performance schools. And when you talk about high-performance schools at the highest level, you're really talking about the entire building envelope and the entire campus. Well, for the purposes of this discussion, we're talking simply about the lighting system. And what is a high-performance lighting system? Well, it's one that delivers the right kind of light, amount of light, where you need it, when you need it, at the lowest total life cycle cost. So now that we've kind of gone over some recent trends that we're seeing on campuses of today, let's really get into some of the data and the facts behind what I'm finding out about school campuses across the country. The first is the astonishing amount of money that we're actually spending on energy at our educational institutions. $14 billion is what is estimated that we're spending on energy. That means that we need to reduce that energy consumption on those campuses, because every dollar that we waste on energy, that means that's less money that's going toward actual education. If you look on the right-hand side of the screen, this information is a little bit dated, so I'm sure it has changed some over the past couple of years, but I still think it's very interesting information to look at. If you take a look down toward the middle there, you'll see the prevalence of lighting controls. At the time when this survey was taken, 83% of the campuses said that they did not have controls integrated into their spaces. Now again, codes over the past couple of years has caused a shift in that, right? A lot of areas are now saying we had to have controls not only from an energy standpoint, but also from just a controllability standpoint in the classroom. So I do feel like this has probably shifted somewhat, but I still think that we should look at this as a great opportunity. We need to get more controls on campuses.
Okay, guys, so let's continue with some of this data, if you will. This slide also indicates something that I've seen change over the past year and a half or so that I've been in this role. When I first started in this role, we were seeing that lighting was consuming about 41 to anywhere 43% of the energy use on a campus. The positive thing is that's changing. We know that we have more energy-efficient technology out there. As I mentioned a second ago, we have controls that are being integrated into campuses more now. But there's still an opportunity here. If you look at the K through 12 market, about 29% of the energy consumption is from lighting. If you look at colleges and universities, it's about 31%. So as I mentioned, there's still an opportunity for us to improve on that. What's even more interesting is that the lighting that's on a campus is oftentimes used very inefficiently. It's used in spaces that aren't even occupied. And UC Davis actually conducted some research on this, and they found about 30% of the lighting energy was spent in corridors and hallways. Well, if you look at corridor and hallway applications, people are only there when they're passing from one class to another. They're transition areas. So that's an opportunity to dim down the lights in those spaces. On the right-hand side, you can see what a data logger was able to record on a typical campus here. This is basically in a large university-type setting. Take a look, let's say, at the restrooms. The green bar shows when the light's on. The gray bar indicates when it was occupied. You can see that those lights were on most of the time when no one was in the space. Same thing with some other areas, such as the lobby or the library. So these are spaces we definitely need to consider getting controls installed into those areas. So let's stop for a second, take another polling question before we continue with some more of these data facts, if you will. How much of the interior lighting in your schools or on your school projects are LED? So about 0 to 25%. So while we're hearing, got the highest score, so while we're hearing more and more about LED integration, specifically in exterior spaces, it's still not becoming mainstream in many of our school districts and our colleges and universities across the country. So again, another area for opportunity for us to reduce some of that energy use in those spaces and also give luminaires that allow for better controllability when you integrate controls. So a couple more facts for you guys. This first one's pretty interesting on the left side of your screen. It says that 77% of schools are 35 years plus. Again, I've been in this role for about a year and a half now, and over the past year and a half, what I have learned when I've been out visiting schools is that 35 years is being very generous. I'm finding many schools that are 50 years, 60 years old. So what that means is these schools probably do not have the latest technology installed. They do not have state-of-the-art luminaires. They do not have the controls so they control the lighting based on the task at hand. These, again, are areas that we need to go in and address to make sure that we're giving the best learning environment that we possibly can for both the students and the teachers. On the right, this really just kind of supports the trend that we mentioned a little bit earlier around safety and security and how important that is to a school campus. This report was actually from the National Institute of Justice, and it was from 2012. And it showed that students ages 12 to 18 experienced an estimated 615,000 incidents of theft on their campuses, in addition to violent victimizations. So this is true. We know this is happening on campuses today. Let's think about higher education institutions where students are out walking the campus late at night. They're passing on sidewalks in between buildings. We need to make sure that those spaces are illuminated so that these students have facial recognition of people approaching them and so that they have a feeling of being very safe as they pass through those campuses. So I decided to do my own little research project. You know, you can find anything on the internet these days. So I did some searches about schools that, due to time constraints, that it impacted the renovation project or impacted the school in some way. Now, I don't know anything about these projects other than what I was able to read, online. So I don't know the background information. But I did think it was very interesting. There was one school that you see here that was located in Pennsylvania and another in Nebraska. They actually had to delay school starts due to the summertime renovations not occurring on the timeline that they had originally set. So that means as you're looking across your campuses or as you're working on projects, you need to make sure that we have solutions available that can meet the timeline that you've set in place. Also on that same path is around budget. There was a school in Virginia that I found that the renovation bids, were over budget. This completely delayed the renovation project. And I know this can be common on several other projects, not just with schools. But again, we need to make sure that there's solutions that meet all the stakeholders' needs, but that can also keep you in check as far as the budget is concerned. So let's shift gears again and show you some before and after images of what can happen in a classroom setting that has the right controls and lighting solutions installed. This is an elementary school. It's probably a kindergarten class or a first grade class perhaps. And as you take a look at this image, I want you to focus on the right-hand side of the screen where you see the alphabet up above the whiteboard. What's happening here is that alphabet is not being clearly illuminated, or evenly illuminated, I should say. You're getting a lot of light on those horizontal desks, which is great for the students to be able to see, but as they look around the vertical surfaces, you're not getting even illumination. It's almost like that cave effect that we've talked about a lot. As you shift to new lighting, you can see now you have nice, even, almost volumetric type illumination. The students can clearly read the alphabet that's over the whiteboard, but they still have plenty of light, to conduct the tasks they need to on that horizontal work plane. In this example, and this is actually a school located up in Chicago, if you take a look again at the right-hand side of the screen, what you'll see is that AV screen is being washed out, The students can't really see what's on there. And I would imagine that what's being projected on that screen is of importance, and it is helping them to learn in that classroom. But the problem is they're not able to see what's being projected there. Now, if you look at the control system that's installed in this classroom, which is on the lower left-hand side of the screen, the two toggle switches indicate to me that the teacher probably has the flexibility, or the ability, I should say, to turn off that row of lights that's closer to the screen. But for whatever reason, that did not happen in this case. Perhaps the toggle switches were inconveniently located on the other side of the room, and she didn't want to pass across the room and disrupt the students. There could be a multitude of reasons of why that didn't happen. That's what we need to fix. We need to have the lighting and the controls, as I mentioned earlier, for the task at hand. So take a look at what happens when we go in and install LED luminaires in that space. Again, delivering that volumetric type of lighting, so you're filling the space very evenly with light. But on top of that, we've added very easy and intuitive controls. So if you take a look on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see the different preset settings. The teacher can go to full light output simply by hitting the high button. She can go to low output, by hitting the low. And when we go into whiteboard mode, or if we go into AV mode, you have the option to be able to select the right lighting for those different tasks in the classroom. So I know some of you on the webinar may be thinking, well, gosh, is it possible to meet all the needs and all the demands that I need to? Is it possible to go in and make all the stakeholders happy and to stay on budget and to reduce energy? Well, it is possible to do that. In fact, Chicago District 59 accomplished this. I believe it was back in 2014 when they began the installation over to the LED product and integrated controls. And this was a quote from Tony Rossi, who's the executive director for facilities there. He said that they wanted a sustainable and energy-efficient lighting solution. They want to be able to control it classroom by classroom, and they were able to do that. So it is possible to get the right solutions that meet all of the needs and the demands. So let's take another polling question. How important is lighting controllability in the classroom? Very important. Well, I'm very glad to see that that's how the majority of everyone responded, because it is. As we've talked about over the past 20, 25 minutes or so, we keep talking about being able to control the lighting based on the task at hand. But on top of just being able to control that lighting, we've got to make it easy for the occupants in that space to be able to control it, or as we all know, the controls will never be used as they were originally intended. So what are some of the ABC solutions that we have to offer here through Acuity? Well, the first is the GRAD luminaire. It's a suspended luminaire. And we know that many of the schools, you guys struggle with having to be on budget and with those initial costs. But at the same time, we also know that so many schools want to be able to install suspended luminaires. Basically, they like the aesthetics. They love that rectilinear form that they're so used to. But the issue's been the price point, and we know you haven't been able to install those products. So about 2 months ago, we launched GRAD. Now, GRAD is available in both 4-foot and 8-foot section lengths. You get 80% uplight, 20% downlight. So if you want an option that gives you more distributions, right, you would probably need to go to a product like Bruno. But GRAD delivers quality lighting in a space at a cost-effective price point, and it is readily available, so you can meet those tight time constraints. Another solution we have, if you want to go toward a recessed type luminaire, which everyone's very familiar with, maybe you're trying to match existing, go with the BLT option. It's the best in value ambient lighting solution for school-type applications. As I was mentioning, it is a recessed chopper solution. It delivers volumetric illumination, which, as I mentioned earlier, that means now the horizontal work plane and those ever so important vertical surfaces are going to be evenly illuminated in a classroom. But the beautiful part for you guys who are doing renovation-type projects, especially those school-type projects that I mentioned, is a very shallow fixture depth. At just over 2 inches, is perfect for renovation-type opportunities, or if you have those plenum restrictions you need to worry about in the ceiling. You do get some different diffuser options with this particular luminaire, and you can certainly integrate it with our control system. Lastly, I wanted to mention digital controls. This is from our M-Pod family of products from Enlight. It's a plug-and-play type control system if you're not very familiar with it. Now, maybe not for those quick summertime renovations would you install this, but as you're thinking forward on future projects at your campuses, or if you're working on projects, think about installing these type of controls. As I mentioned, they can be very easy to install and very easy for the occupants to use. With the button controls for the classrooms, you can label different scenes, so now you know that the teacher will actually utilize these controls in the spaces. And finally, I wanted to point out our A+ certification. Some of you guys may be familiar with this, but others it may be new. Basically, this logo symbolizes our confidence and commitment to delivering solutions that simply work. Well, what does that mean to you? Well, that means for your project, you're going to get consistent performance, visual appearance, and system interoperability. You can be assured that the project is going to perform and end as you originally expected it to. So I would encourage all of you to take a look at our website. We do have a website dedicated to education and solutions for educational facilities. There we also have a whole bank of different case studies. So as you're looking for looking into future projects, take a look at these case studies. See where we have success stories and what type of solutions were actually used in those spaces. So this wraps up this presentation for today. I do have my contact email there, so if you have any additional questions or need additional information that wasn't addressed in this webinar, please feel free to reach out to me directly. If you are in the middle of working on a project and you need some assistance or some recommendations on the right controls and lighting solutions, I'm more than happy to help you with that as well. Appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, and have a good afternoon.